You're watching Boxing Backstage, where we decode all the super showdowns and also look ahead to some mouth-watering face-offs in the world of boxing. Hi, I'm Rupa Ramni, and this is your one-stop destination for all the analysis in the world of boxing. You're watching Boxing Backstage, presented by Red Corner Sports Promotions. And of course, joining me here today is someone very, very special. He's part of the media team of the WBC Asia Boxing Council and also a fight sports commentator for WP Boxing. Please extend a warm welcome to Joseph Gwilt, who's joining us all the way from Bangkok.
Hello, thank you very much.
Hi, Joe. Hi. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thanks. Excited to be here. Lots to discuss.
Yes, and I know that you have pressing engagements to get to, so I'm sure, but we'll try and make this fun for you as well.
Yeah, okay. I'm sure we'll get through it all.
All right, go ahead, Joe. You were saying something.
I have an event, a WP boxing event, WBC Asia title fights this afternoon in Bangkok. So I start my morning here, I head off there, and then more boxing to watch in the evening. So it's perfect Saturday for me.
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, you're living it up there. Perfect.
Yeah.
We're just kind of warming you up for what's to come. So thank you so much for giving us your time. We're not going to take any more moments to get into the first fight. Of course, we're reviewing some of the top fights that have happened in the last month, and we thought we'd start off with the Halloween special, 31st October at Wembley Arena. Former undisputed cruiserweight champion Oleksandr Usyk beating Derek Del Boy Chisora. That's the scoreline: 117 to 112, 115 to 113, and 115 to 113. Before we get into, of course, the round by round analysis, Joe, what did you make of this matchup at the start of it?
Was very interesting from the start. As you mentioned, the former undisputed cruiserweight champion moving up. He's had one fight at heavyweight already. That was against Chaz Witherspoon. Not the greatest opponent. And this was his first real test at the weight. Chisora is probably the best journeyman / gatekeeper in the division. He's had some fantastic wins. He's had some losses. In those losses, he commended himself extremely well. So to beat Chisora, you have to be one of the best. So this was his first real test. As the former WBO cruiser champion, he's moving up to heavyweight and weight. They have the rule where then you are the mandatory. So he is the mandatory for the WBO belt at heavyweight. But he needs these fights, and this was definitely a fight he needed to have. A strong heavyweight, a real live heavyweight, which he got.
Yeah, well, let's break it down round by round. How would you view the first few rounds? We do know that they were quite evenly matched, you'd say, at the start off?
I think Chisora knew this is a cruiserweight coming up. I'm a heavyweight. He's a cruiserweight. I've got to let him know he is in this division. He's in the heavyweight division now. I'm going to make him understand that soon. And that's how Chisora came out. Came out strong, came out punching, came out pressuring. Really tried to put it on Usyk, which he did very well. And I gave him the first round. I gave him the second round. I thought he really tried to press the fight and wanted to make that extra weight pay on the man. I would say smaller man. The weight is smaller. The height wasn't. Actually, Usyk had the height and reach advantage, but it was the weight. He wanted to make him feel a live heavyweight.
Where did you see the change happening? You said round one, round two, you give it to Chisora. Where did you see Usyk getting back into the fight?
I started to see it in the third round. Some people are split on the third round. They still think Chisora handled him quite well. I started to see the change 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and possibly even 8. I thought it just gradually built. The movement was there. The head movement was there. The footwork was there. He started to figure out the rushes that Chisora was putting on him, picking him off with a jab. He'd had a 1-2. He'd had a 3-punch combination and gradually found his timing, step by step by step, through the early to mid rounds, I started to have him having quite a lead during the middle stages. As soon as we got to kind of the 7th round, there was one point where everybody was expecting Chisora to be able to hurt Usyk and not the other way around. But in the 7th round, there was a combination which made Chisora wobble, leg stiffen. You saw it. He went against the ropes. Usyk tried to pressure him, but does he have the power? Maybe we'll get to that point in a minute. Does he have the power at heavyweight to finish the man? He has the skill. He's got all the tools. Power is the question. But saying that, he hurt Chisora. And I didn't see at any point Chisora hurt Usyk. So at this point, at the midway stage 7, I had Usyk. The skills. Skills pay the bills. That's what they say. And this is where it came into play. And I had him ahead of that point. Chisora was pressuring, he's still putting a lot on and making it a fight and letting him know he was in a fight. And a lot of fans, a lot of people still say, oh, the pressure fighter. Gave a few more rounds to him. I was watching the pure boxing in the whole event.
Would you also say that he strategized a little, started strategizing a little more, Usyk, with his stance particularly? He kept Chisora guessing. Would you comment on that as well?
Yeah, I mean, he was using his movement. That's one of the things he had. As a lighter man, as a smaller man, he's got great footwork. He's got great fundamentals. He's a fantastic boxer, Olympic gold medalist. He's got all the skills there are. And that was the one thing we always know about him. So he was never going to engage into a real slugfest, a fight. That was the wrong move. That's what Chisora wanted to draw him into. And that's what Usyk needed to stay away from. And he did. He used his footwork. He used the ring very well. He could pump out the jab. He gradually upped it to the 1-2. Normally, he is a slow starter and figures his man out. This is a test game to someone like Usyk. To Chisora, it's a brawl. To Usyk, it's a chess match. And you pick your pieces off bit by bit.
You know, interesting you say that, Joe, because from his previous fights, we've seen Usyk is a bit of I won't say rough, but he is pretty brutal when it comes to, a fight. So in that sense, did you see a slightly different Usyk in this particular encounter, or did you expect him to exactly play the way he did?
It played out very similarly to how I thought it would play out. I thought he'd break the man down, and he tried to. And as we discussed, it got up to about 7 or 8, and I thought that he was doing that. And in the end of the 7th round, there was a real wobble, and I thought, he might have a chance to finish it. But the tide turned, and we had a slight change from the 9th round onwards. I think Chisora had a couple of very strong rounds there, came back into it, put the pressure on. And I thought, it's tiring. Is the heavy weight gradually taking its toll on Usyk? So we started with Chisora. It went for a long run for Usyk, started to take control. Chisora came back, started to get a few rounds in there, was applying himself very well. One thing I'll say is there was no crowd. If there was a crowd, I think it would have benefited Chisora very much. He's a passionate fighter. He likes the crowd, the roar of the crowd. It would have spurred him on. And those rounds where he started to come back, if there was a crowd there, as it was in England, would have been roaring for him, roaring him on, and it would have spurred him on. Would it give him that extra push to carry through those next rounds?
And that you said made the difference. That's an interesting point you make, Joe, because we always talk about, especially this year when we are talking about sporting spectacles without the spectators, it does give some sort of an impact to the players playing. Some of them kind of feed off it. Some of them kind of like it. They like no noise, and some love the noise. Interesting that you mentioned Chisora is that kind of a person who probably feeds off that. Yeah. And would you say that then became a bit of a differentiator towards the end, even though he did come on? Round 10, would you also say Chisora kind of holding his own there?
Yes, I think it was a couple of rounds. Round 9 and 10, he started to claw back into it. The pressure was working. Usyk, could he be tiring? You think that at the time. After, now we know the full result. we can say, oh, no, it wasn't. Maybe he was holding back a bit and trying to win those last 3 rounds. You never know what the corners were telling them. Conserve a bit of energy. Maybe you ahead, but you need to win these last 2 rounds. Take a round off and put it all into the last 2 rounds. I think at this stage, Chisora knew he was behind. The corner knew he was behind. So they told him, you have to go out. His corner actually wasn't telling great information. They were saying, keep doing what you're doing, keep doing what you're doing. But I think he needed to pressure more. He needed to try and be a bit more rough, try and rough Usyk up. But it's easier said than done when you're working with a highly skilled boxer like Usyk, who's moving. He's moving all the time with your tools.
How would you then sum up the last few rounds then? How did Usyk kind of close it out for you?
For me, I thought Chisora was trying his hardest, trying to pressure, trying to rough him up. But I thought the skills, the movements, the footwork, the cleaner shots were still coming by Usyk. I had it 116, 112, which is in between. 2 judges had it very close to the 115, 113, and 1 judge had it a little wider, and I had it in between there. There's a lot of people who said, oh, it should have been a draw, oh, it's closer, oh, Chisora won. I didn't feel that at all. It's round by round. You score those rounds, you put them in the bag, they're locked in the bank, and they're done. It was a fascinating fight to watch. Chisora handled himself very well, and as one of the premier gatekeepers, will get more fights from this. He's got nothing to be ashamed about. And Usyk should be very proud of himself. I mean, in the post-fight interview, he said he wants the WBO belt next. Now, he's the mandatory. There's other things going on there. Will that fight happen? Will the unification with Fury happen with AJ, who's the WBO holder? That's something we have to wait and see. But he says he wants his shot. Now, if that's against AJ, he wants his shot. If the belt's to be stripped and he needs to fight someone else for the vacant belt, he wants his shot. He's going to push all that. That's what he wants.
Yeah, he's making all the right noises, because we did see Anthony Joshua at the fight. Yeah. He was watching this face-off, and there was a nice little banter. I don't know if you caught that, Joe, at the end of the fight when he says, "Oh, Anthony, nice to see you here." And he's like, "Yeah, I'm waiting for you." Your thoughts on that, and how there's been a lot of noise about him and what he's gonna, and the prospects, like you mentioned.
Well, I think it's very telling that he was at the fight. If it wasn't important to him and it didn't mean anything to him, he wouldn't have been there. Maybe just a spectator, but I don't think so. I think him being at the fight, knowing that it's his mandatory, he wants to see what he's like. Close up, and he wants to see what he's like against probably a heavyweight that he knows very well. What did he see from it? I think he saw things he can exploit. He can pressure him. There are moments when he can be roughed up. Chisora is a bit more raw than AJ. AJ's a completely different step up from Chisora. So he'll be quite confident in what he sees in Usyk. As we mentioned earlier, Usyk at 6'3", I believe, was fighting a 6'1" Chisora, which in this day and age is a short heavyweight. Now you're moving into the 6'6" Joshua, the 6'7" Wilder, the 6'9" Fury. The height is a completely different tool to deal with it, a completely different weapon, a completely different advantage. But we know that Chisora beat in the amateurs the 6'6" Joyce, who's coming on at the moment very well. But yes, it was telling that he was there. We all want the unification match. Yeah. Will they be stepped aside? Will the belt be taken away? That's something we have to see in time. Whichever fight happens will be enjoyable, I'm sure, for all of us.
Yeah, and that's something that we'll all be looking forward to and waiting for as well. But moving on to the next one, we're going to come across here to where I am in India, to Hyderabad, in fact, where we had a club fight. It was refreshing to have a fight, in fact, in India after a long time, after the pandemic, and it was between Savio Michael and Kunderi Raju. Ended, of course, a very brief encounter that I'm sure you watched it as well. Third round knockout. Your thoughts on that encounter, Joe?
Okay, well, I didn't watch it live, but as on you who watched that, and it's one of these knockouts that's going viral. It was a devastating knockout. Do you want to talk about the knockout, or do you want to go back to round one? I felt
let's begin with the round. Let's begin with the first couple of rounds. Let's go over that. Let's
couple of rounds. Michael was doing what he was doing right was straight punches. He was firing the 1-2 straight down the line, and the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. Fundamentals were there.
Nice.
Raju was swinging. He was swinging his shots. He was throwing the hook and trying to go for the body, which left a complete gap, which the straight shots were picking off the target. And that's where Michael started to win the fight. You could see it coming. You could see that he was going to find the target at some point on the button. He did a few times. It was his footwork as well. It wasn't just the straight punches, it was his footwork. He was in, he was out, he knew his positioning. He could pivot very well either side. And when the wide punches, he found the angle in the opening and the 1-2 straight down. He did fire a few hooks, a few body shots, but the thing I was impressed with was the accuracy of the straight punching. Gradually, first 2 rounds, it was there, you could see it. When we got to the third round, that's when it showed. Really, there was a beautiful 1-2, which really caught Raju. There was, just before the actual knockout itself, there was a pivot and a jab. His legs froze.
Yeah.
The movement, he pivoted around, found the angle. There was a double jab as he moved in for the straight right, which landed on the button, completely froze, delayed reaction like that. It was a heavy, heavy knockout, but it was perfect timing with those straight punches. He knew where his man was. He pivoted around and caught him. The double jab phased him a little bit as the right hand dropped. It was a beautiful combination. It was beautiful movement. And a beautiful knockout. It's quite hard to say beautiful knockout. It's nice to see a knockout. We all want to see a knockout, but when it's a devastating knockout, a hard knockout, you feel for that fighter who's been knocked out. And he
couldn't walk. He couldn't get up and walk up for a while. It was deadly.
Yes, what we don't want to see. Yeah, we want to see the knockouts. We love it. It's part of our human nature to see that. I believe, to see the power and ferocity that a man can hold, but we don't want any harm to the fighter. But a fantastic fight for people to watch. A great knockout. There will be a highlight reel for sure for Michael.
Yeah, and we're expecting more, of course, more such fights to happen in India. But yeah, that was quite a good display by Savio. But we're going to move again for the next fight to London this time. That happened on the November 14th. It's, of course, one of my personal favorites, so that's why I'm beaming. It was between the undisputed lightweight champion of the world, Katie Taylor, taking on Miriam Gutierrez. Before we get into that fight itself, how special a boxer is someone like Katie for women pugilists and for the world of boxing? I'm not going to genderize it, but how significant a contribution has she made over the years, Joe?
Well, I think she's taking boxing, female boxing, should I say, to a completely different level. Yeah. I remember a time when there was no female boxing. I remember the days of Jane Couch, British boxer, and then it moved on to Chrissy Martin, and then it moved on to Mia St. John and Layla Ali, and they all had their skills, but they were not at the same skill set at the time. We went through a few different, Anne Wolf as well, who's a fantastic female and boxer, and great for her, but we've been taken to another level. We've been really have with Taylor. To watch her, it's sublime. Her skills, her footwork, her head movement, her positioning, her aggression, her control. There's not enough superlatives to go on. So you're right. What has she done for female boxing? She's taken it to the world stage where people respect it highly. We have Clarissa Shields as well, and a lot of people would say maybe she's the pound for pound, but Taylor, people have their opinions. We got two fantastic, but we're talking about Taylor at the moment, and yeah, she's taken it to a completely different level, from amateur days all the way through to her professional days, and she's a star attraction. And she will, when we talk about the situation, the pandemic and no crowds. Now she's had this win. They're waiting. They're just waiting for the crowds to be able to come back. And then Crow Park can fit 100,000 people in Dublin. As soon as that's available for the crowds, it's a guaranteed sellout. Guaranteed. She's a superstar.
Yeah, we believe that, because going by the encounter that she had against Miriam, where the scorelines were at 100 to 89, 100 to 90, and 99 to 91. But yes, another unanimous decision. Let's get into the a bit of a round by round version from you, Joe. Would you say how round one? Take us through it. Of course, Katie coming all guns blazing.
Yeah, exactly. Round one, ding ding, she ran across the ring, and it was just ferocity personified. It was beautiful. She just went straight at her. And she'd had those two fights with Pursuit, which were they were fantastic fights in their own right. And then, but she wanted to make a statement here. She wanted to get a different fight. She wanted to go in, and she did. It came all guns blazing. And to be honest, she didn't really stop for most of the fight. It was that her hand speed was tremendous. Her combinations, like I say, there's nothing I wasn't impressed by. Her footwork, her speed, her head movement, the pressure, the timing, the combinations. It was just beautiful to watch, round after round after round. It's hard to see the rounds that they gave to Gutierrez, to be honest with you. She showed heart. She's got a twin. Yeah. To be able to take that, and for the 10 rounds to be able to take that. There's only 1 point that you could say against Katie Taylor. She didn't get the stoppage, but that's all credit to Gutierrez for that. There was a knockdown, excuse me, earlier in round four, yes. Again, just the timing was perfect. I thought that was the beginning of the end, but it wasn't. Gutierrez dusted herself off. She got back and she stayed in the fight. She could have quit at any point and nobody would have questioned it. Her corner could have pulled her out at any point and nobody would have questioned it. She hung in there and she got to the end of the fight. But Taylor was superb.
Yeah, it was a little. It was largely one-sided, Joe, But I like the point you make about Miriam, that she didn't let her get away with it. She held on, said, okay, you need to put those extra punches to win this one. Yes, you're there. I'm not possibly countering you, but you need to keep doing it for you to go away with it, right?
Definitely. She made her work for it. She made her work for 10 rounds. She kept her in the fight. So Taylor had to think, I'm not getting this woman out of here. I'm trying everything I do. I'm going to try something new. But when she moved forward in the pressure, the combinations were just there. Gutierrez hung in there more. So I don't want to take anything, I don't want to say anything negative about Gutierrez. But Taylor was just so good on the night. But Gutierrez, just the heart. And you've got to commend that. You've got to commend someone who can stand in there with someone of Taylor's quality coming at you.
Yeah.
You've got to. It's one of the greatest aspects to be able to, the heart of the fighter, to stay in there when it's not going your way, when you're not having the joy in the fight. But Taylor goes from strength to strength in that fight.
Would you also say, before we, of course, wrap up this fight, Joe, would you say that in the psyche of Taylor, at least going by this fight, it wasn't always about just a single shot? She didn't always come with single. It would always be a flurry of it. Is that how she went about every round, would you say?
Well, she had some great movement as well in her footwork, and she was using her head very well, keeping out the range very well, and she was waiting for the opening. and then she just shoots straight in. Again, fantastic work, and the flurry would just come in. Some of the left hooks that she caught, Gutierrez were sublime. They really were. Like I say, I haven't got enough good to say about it. But at points, she'd wait. It wasn't just all about rush, rush, rush. At points, she'd wait. She was just on the outside, and she had beautiful footwork, nice wide stance. She could move, slip the jab, slip the right hand, and just wait, counter. And it wasn't a one-punch counter. There were one-punch counters here and there, but she put the pressure on. I think she wanted a stoppage. I think she'll be happy with the display. I think she wanted a stoppage. After the two pursuing fights, I think she wanted to really make a statement. And she did. And she did, for me, sure.
You mentioned Miriam and how sporty she was. Don't know if you got those last bits right after the fight as well. Both of them, the camaraderie they shared. Miriam, of course, helping with the belts and that little moment of both of them hugging, smiling. Just beautiful to watch that. And even with Pursoon earlier when they had the rematch. Beautiful to see such moments, isn't it?
Yes, I think we see that quite a lot more in female boxing. We see the respect they have for each other, and it's something nice to see. You see it in male boxing as well, but I think Gutierrez, I won't say in awe, but I think she knows that she fought perhaps the greatest female boxer to this point. And she went the distance for that. And she showed her the respect that she deserves. And that's a beautiful attribute for someone to have. She knew who beat her. She knew the winner. She knew who she was against. And she showed her the respect she deserves. Yeah, it was very nice to see. Always is good to see. When people can, when boxers and fighters can put that much effort and anger, ferocity, aggression, try to hurt someone else. And when it's finished, it's just a sporting event. And we're connected again with humanity. That's nice. That's great to see.
Nice. And on speaking of aggression, of course, the next fight we're going to talk about was short-lived, very fleeting bit on the same day, November 15th, over in Las Vegas. Supposedly the best closer in the business, Terence Crawford, bringing down the special one, Kell Brook. Take us through that bit. It was obviously, again, another short fight, but give us the breakdown on that one, Joe.
Well, I think we have to talk about coming into the fight, Crawford and Brook. I think Crawford was trying to make, from what I'm led to believe, they did have the package fight made. Somebody in, I don't know which country, I heard Bob Arum say that it was somewhere in the Middle East, had already organized it, signed, the deal had almost been done. But the Minister of Health said they couldn't do it without a crowd. So they got scrapped. Don't know the full details on it, but it was said to be almost made. Apart from the T's and the I's, it was almost made. So Brook came in. Now, Brook's been a former champion himself, and he's a great fighter. He was welterweight champion, and he moved up 2 divisions, as we know, Golovkin. He did very well in that fight, but broke an orbital bone, put him out. When his fight back, he came back down to defend his welterweight belt. And again, his other orbital bone got broken by Spence. So he's been beaten by 2 of the best. He's a finely conditioned athlete. He definitely came in prepared for this fight. He I believe, thought he could win. He came in great shape. You saw that at the weigh-in. He was in perfect condition. And he had confidence as well. So I love the weigh-ins. I love to see there's a lot you can tell at the weigh-in. You look at their eyes, you look how they respond. Both men are being confident coming into this. So as we get to the fight itself, the first 2 rounds I gave to Brook. I thought Brook was fantastic. I thought his jab was fantastic. I thought his movement was fantastic. He looked great. It's like, ooh. Okay. I didn't expect him to put up a good fight. I expected it to be a very good fight. His timing was good. His jab was good. He was catching him. He was flipping the shots. Again, after the fact, another one who's a slow starter is Crawford. He says he doesn't watch his fights. He says he doesn't watch his opponents. They don't make a plan. They don't make a game plan. I'm sure Brook had a very detailed game plan of what he wanted. And Crawford says, I don't need that. He's another one of these fighters who figures his man out on the night in the ring. He'll look for the movements, the tells, and everything. And as it transpired, round 3, he had worked in that, and he had seen those tells, and he had seen the openings, and he started to unleash a little bit. You could see it coming. You could see the shot coming. You could see he found all those openings. So that's the end of round 3. Sorry, yes.
Yeah, I was just speaking about the first few rounds. You did mention he observed him really well. There was such an eerie calm from Terence, I thought, in the first few rounds. Is that how he always is in most of his fights? Just take us through that a bit, please.
Yeah, generally speaking, he is one of these fighters who likes to figure his man out. There's numerous fighters who do this. They like the first round, they say what's coming behind a jab, what's the opening, how far they move their feet forward, how far they move them back, is the glove low, do they bring the glove back at a certain point when they throw a certain punch. He'll look for every single tell that he could see. And then gradually just up it and see whether he was right about those movements that he thought he could see, those positions he thought he could attack and exploit. And that's what happened in the 3rd round. We started to see he had found tells, he had found openings, he had found the space he needed. So yeah, he's definitely a thinking man fighter who he's happy to give a round or 2 away to find. Mayweather with one of these. He often lost the first couple of rounds. He was happy to let the fighter come on and show what they had. What's your game plan? What are you coming to me with? And he'd let them show him. He'd think, okay, now I know what you've got. See what I've got.
Okay, that's what happened in round 4 then. We saw what he got. Did you see that coming at all, Joe? Did you see that coming?
I did not see that coming. I saw the 3rd round that, okay, it's good. Gradually Crawford's getting into it and he understands. But no, I did not see that coming at all. The shot that put him down for the first knockdown was almost, as they stepped in together, it was a stepping jab hook. It wasn't that powerful, but it was from an angle and timing. The punches that hurt you most are the ones you don't see. And it came from an angle. He just walked into it, took the step back, and I think it was the hand that went down, and the referee had no choice at that point but to give him the standing 8 count. But no, I didn't see that coming. And he cheated back against ropes, went down. As soon as the 8 count had finished, like you mentioned earlier, one of the best finishes in the game, he just flew across the ring and every punch in the book. Some of the angles, some of the dropped right hands, he was under so much pressure. The punches were on point. They were accurate. He was in a daze. The referee had no choice but to step in, really. He had no choice. Sadly for Brook, he came up against one of the most ruthless finishers in the game.
And it's weird also, right after the fight, right after the knockout, you could see him mouthing what happened there. I don't know what happened there. Does it happen in the boxer? Do you really don't remember when that? You're not able to recollect how it all went down?
Do you mean directly the referee stopped the fight? Crawford said something to him. I'm not sure whether he was. I've watched it a few times. I'm not 100% whether he was saying, "Okay, you're right," or he was saying, "That's what I told you was going to happen." I'm not sure. I've watched it a few times. I think in the heat of the moment, it's more the bravado, the ego, kind of, I told you. He did actually say, "You don't know what I've got. You think you know what I got, but you don't know what I've got." And I think at that moment he said, "You just found out what I've got." A few seconds passed and that ego went and he realized that's not necessarily the right thing to do. But that just proves that he's just got this ruthless streak. And when it comes to finishing, he fires in with that aggression, and a bit of that ruthlessness is still there. Still there after the fight. That's the nature of the game. That's the nature of the game. He's not necessarily he's not necessarily that much of a talker beforehand. I think Aram's mentioned that in the promotion and the promotional thing of the fight. He lets his talking in the ring and leaves it in there as well.
Nice. And interesting, of course, that Brook, in the 3 losses that he's had, all 3 have been knockouts, including this one. We're going to move on to another very interesting encounter. This fight number 5, November 28th in London, between 2 super champions, of course, Daniel Dubois and Joe Juggernaut Joyce. This was a very, very exciting encounter. Obviously, between two, you see the difference in age right away, a 35-year-old against a young, strapping, very, very strong 23-year-old. Take us through this encounter as well, Joe. Obviously, a superb display right from the start.
Yeah, I mean, you've got two undefeated fighters coming in. Neither of them are quite at the world level yet. However, it drew people all in from around the world. They knew Dubois, 15-0 at the time. They knew Joyce, 11-0 at the time. This was for the British, Commonwealth, and European belts, which takes you back to the days when they really meant something. There's a lot of different belts at the moment, a lot of different names and titles and things. And to a degree, it gets diluted. And the British, Commonwealth, European used to be a massive stepping stone for these two British fighters, English fighters. And it went back to those days, and it drew the world in. I know a lot of Americans and a lot of Australian people all around the world who were fascinated by this matchup. So straight into the fight, you had these two undefeated fighters. Both thought they were going to win. Both extremely confident. Beforehand, I thought, I was edging Dubois. I'm not going to hide and say that I wasn't. I was edging Dubois.
Yes. Most of them, most of us were, of course, yes.
Yes. I had this feeling that Joyce, sometimes he looks slow, sometimes he looks ponderous, but I think it's extremely deceptive. He knows his range. He moves the jab. He doesn't move it from close in. He has it half cocked at all time. His timing's very good. And for a 6'6", 18.5 stone man who after each of his wins can do a somersault backflip type thing in the ring, he's obviously more than people give him credit for. That always amazes me. So I've kind of changed my opinion. I don't think he is as slow as I thought he was. It's just common misbelief. He's slow. He's clumsy. He's not. He's very deceptive. And I think this was the fight where it showed. It was the jab. It was the jab that really won. Two things won the fight for me for Joyce. Number one, the jab. Number two, his chin. He took some tremendous shots, and they didn't phase him. He kept coming forward, and that's why he's called the Juggernaut, to be honest. So round by round, or as the fight progressed, I kind of saw Joyce win the first round. It was a good round.
Yeah.
It was the jab dead. I thought Dubois won the second round. I thought, okay,
yes,
good. And then I had Joyce. And then I had Joyce. So it's okay, Joyce is taking it. And then Dubois, I felt, came back into it. He put some pressure on. He really had to rush him. Some of his attacks were great. He caught Joyce with some huge shots. He just kept taking them. There was nothing that really phased him. Nothing that phased him at all. So it made this such a fantastic encounter. Oh, it's back and forth, one round here, one round there. I thought Dubois took round 5, 6, 7, and I felt he was really starting to come into the fight. So at this point, I would have added Dubois 1 up, and I felt Joyce just starting to get back to the basics. All these attacks, all these good shots, didn't phase Joyce one bit. And the eye was.
Yes, that's what I want to ask you about. Yes, Dubois was still in it. He'd come back into the 5th round. Again, held himself, ate some of those jabs pretty well. But the eye, do you think that was beginning to trouble him at that point?
Yes, the eye was closing at the end of round 3, I believe. There was already issues with the eye. So as Dubois had the eye issue, and he came on for round 5, 6, 7, and he gave him his best shot. When you come forward and you believe that you're dynamite, Dubois, if you believe you've got dynamite fist and you can knock anybody out, and you give this person your best shots, and they stand there in front of you and come back with solid jabs, which are closing your eye. Yes, there's the point that you get mentally beaten. Yeah. You've given it your all, and they're still there. So yes, at the end of round 7 or the start of round 8, I gave to Joyce. And then round 9, I gave to Joyce. Maybe in the 10th round as they came out, it was the jab that made Dubois take a knee. It wasn't a flush jab to the nose, to the chin. It sliced the size of the eye, and I think that just pressed the already closing eye to completely shut. Obviously, some nerve ending had gone in the eye. I'm not sure what exactly happened, but he decided to take a knee.
Yeah. And he says later, I think he couldn't see at that point, and he just couldn't get up. But just going back to the ninth round, Joe, we do sense something coming, because right at the end of the ninth round, you saw Joe punch the air, saying, "Okay, I'm done. I'm home."
Yeah, at the end of the ninth round, I think he realized he'd weathered the storm and he was back in control. And maybe he could say, he was right next to Dubois in there. Maybe he can sense something, he can see something. Yeah, he punched it. He looked at their corner as if to say, "It's mine now. I've taken you to where I want you to be." Because before the fight, a lot of people were saying it was Dubois early by knockout, or it was Joyce late. And if Joyce kind of had that same mentality, he thought, "I've got you now. I got you to exactly where I want you. This is mine now." I think he did sense that. And maybe Dubois sensed it too. So that's what happened in the 10th round. Like I say, he took the knee. Now there's the discussion, did he quit? You know, I don't like to say something. It wasn't really a quit. His eye was closed. He was about to take a beating. He's 23 years old. He's got time to rebuild. There's no need to rush him. In this modern era, we're rushing fighters and pushing them forward and too fast. He's got time. Let him learn his trade. Let him go back to a few confidence-building fights, European level. He came up against another, like I say, this is what was so fantastic at the start. Both of them British, Commonwealth, European level, not quite to the world level yet. But both of them were right at the top of that level and easily able to push through to world level. And Joyce now will. I think Joyce had the tougher fights, the harder opponents, which showed in this fight. And the amateur pedigree as well. Let's not forget he's a silver medalist, Olympic medalist. He's fought some of the best out there at the moment. So the amateur pedigree showed. The age, was it man versus boy? You know, the young guy. Just the mature strength, the mental maturity, the physical maturity. After the fact, yes, it looks like perhaps it was. Was it too early for Dubois to fight this? Not necessarily, because apparently he was up on cards at the time. So if the eye didn't close, there's no reason why he couldn't have edged out a round or two and got the win. It just so happened that the eye did close. That was the telling factor for the finish. But it was close. People had it either way.
Yeah, and what a fight that was. But of course, we're talking about man versus boy. The next fight on the same day, of course, over in Los Angeles, City of Angels. We had two legends, 50-plus men at it, and it was touted, Joe, as the battle of the ages, but did it become the battle of the aged? We had Mike Tyson taking on Roy Jones Jr., I know so many people came out saying, "Oh my God, this is the fight of the year, the decade, you know, pandemic and all of that, and you're getting all this to watch. It's brilliant." What was your expectation going into that? And what did you leave thinking?
Okay, there's different emotions here. Okay. Let's think of it from a logical point of view. They're 15 plus years old. They're past their primes. They're not. It's 8 rounds. It's an exhibition. But you get lost in the hype. You get lost in the hype. Mike Tyson, one of people's most favorite heavyweight champs of all time. Some people say it's the best. That's opinion. Some people say it's the greatest. Infamous, undoubtedly. Probably is most infamous. Exciting, more than likely. You know, he's captured people's imaginations. Roy Jones, for me, one of the greatest boxers ever. If after he went to heavyweight, he retired after he won his heavyweight belt, I think most people will be having him as one of the greatest boxers ever. But this is a fighter who started at light middleweight, won his first title at middleweight. Bruce Tyson was a heavyweight. So sorry. So the legends. We do have 2 legends here.
Yeah.
but they were past their primes. It was an exhibition. It was, for those who thought it was going to be both of them in their primes, it was going to mean something significant. We were going to see everything that we saw of them in their past, and it was going to be the greatest fight ever. I'm sure some of them were sadly disappointed. If you went into it knowing that you're going to watch two of the greatest legends ever in an exhibition match, a sparring match, something good, but let's not expect too much, but let's enjoy it for what it is, then you had a great time. You had a brilliant time watching it. The fight itself wasn't spectacular to watch, but it was interesting to watch these two legends. Round by round, I just thought Tyson pressured, used his shots. You saw some glimpses of his head movement. You saw some glimpses of combination work. Didn't go to the head too much. He was going to the body. Was that part of the rule that there were no knockdowns allowed? Is that, there was something like that? How can you guarantee there's no knockdowns? I'm a bit unsure of all of that. Roy Jones was happy to move, tie up. His game plan was, even though he was an old man as well, it's like Tyson's been out for 15 years. Yes. He was in weight during that time. He's had different things happening in that time. He's come back in. Roy Jones was fighting as short as 3-4 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, I believe. And he's training. And he's training Eubank Jr., so he's in the gym, and he's always been connected to boxing. He's had that longer run. Was he trying to drag him into the deep waters? It didn't work for him. It was the bout was declared a draw. It was very convenient and enjoyable for everybody. If you were a Tyson fan, when they mentioned it was a draw for Tyson, you heard his comments at the end. I'm happy with that. The crowd was happy with that. He's a different man. It wasn't about the crowd. He was doing it for charity. Roy Jones at the end said he thought he won. Are they going to have a rematch? Is the Legends League going to continue? That's
Will Lennox and Holyfield enter the fray and say, okay, we also want to get in some exhibition games, come out of retirement and have some fun?
Yeah, exactly. With the pay-per-view figures at 1.2 million for this event, it's happening again. This is one of the biggest pay-per-view events this year. And to put in perspective, Fury Wilder, which was for the heavyweight championship of the world, the WBC title, a rematch, a massive fight, 850,000 pay-per-view buys. Two legends for an exhibition match, 1.2 million. So people will buy, and if people will buy, it will carry on. We have the option of Holyfield. I've heard rumors that Lennox Lewis said the fight that never happened to him, Riddick Bowe. I don't think Riddick Bowe is in the same league at this moment as Lennox Lewis. I think Lewis keeps himself well. So there's many different fights and many different legends I'm sure people would like to see. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll, of course, be waiting for that as well. But just rounding out this review with the last fight that we have on our cards. It's happened on the 2nd of December at Wakefield. It was between Jazza Dickens and Ryan Walsh. Two British champions went down as 98-93, 97-94, 96-94. Just your thoughts on this, because you're running a bit out of time, though. Your thoughts on how this went, Joe?
Dickens did extremely well. He set a fast pace. He moved in and out. He pivoted well. Basically put Walsh off his game plan. Walsh wanted to engage. Walsh wanted to fight. Dickens boxed, and he boxed beautifully. And he set that pace very well, which with the win puts him with the MTK global contract for the featherweight, which means he has a 2-year deal, 5-fight deal with MTK Global. So a fantastic win for him. He's 29 years old. He's had a couple of losses. He puts himself back in the frame with this deal. 34-year-old Walsh coming to the end. So coming to the end a little bit more, but Dickens deserved winner of the tournament and the contract. And it was energy. It was the energy and the movement and the footwork. There was a point later in the fight where Walsh drew him into the kind of fight that he wanted late in the rounds. It was a bit too little, a bit too late. The work was done. The rounds were in the bank. The boxing had taken those rounds and those points. But it was an interesting affair. Yeah, both former British champions, as you said. So a good win, a very good win for Dickens. Nice to have that contract, and just a shame that there has to be a loser in this as well.
Absolutely. But yeah, it's been fun going over the fights in the last month with you, Joe. Thank you so much for taking us through that. We had a lot of fun, I'm sure, so did you.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for having me on.